Hello and welcome to the Meet the Regions. We're doing the Lakes region tonight. And with me, I have one panelist. I have Payson. Payson, where are you from?
I'm originally from New York, moved to New Hampshire about a year ago. I live in Guilford, New Hampshire, so right on Lake Winnipesaukee, basically.
Great. So I'm from Stratford. That's kind of on the border of the Lakes region. It's not it's like the crossroads between the seacoast, the Merrimack Valley, and then the Lakes region. So a little bit of all. So I'll be able to speak a little bit on my experience in the Lakes region, and we're going to be talking to Payson as well on his experience. How his experience has been since landing in the lakes. So here is a map of the state, the different regions. I would like to define the Lakes region as the libertarians with boats. It's a very touristy area. There's some upper class areas. Obviously, the very famous Lake Winnipesaukee, where there's lots of film, lots of wealthy, high power individuals who enjoy their vacations and tax benefits there. And yeah, so there's a lot that the Lakes region has to offer. Payson, what are some highlights that you have since you've been here?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of the perfect mix of rural and it's not city, but there's you can you can have a little chunk of land while still being close to a lot of things, a lot of restaurants. So that's kind of what drew my wife and I to the area. Guilford, particularly, and a lot of the lake towns, actually, if they border the lake, have lower property taxes because there's some very valuable houses, as you mentioned. Um, some other big selling points to the area. There's a lot of good hiking if you're into that sort of thing. Um, the Belknap 12 pack is right in my backyard. A lot of parks in the area, a lot of hiking opportunities, boating, like you mentioned. Um, it's and for me, work is in the area. That was a big draw for me. Um, there seems to be ample jobs like there are, throughout New Hampshire as a whole. But there's a decent amount of manufacturing in the Lakes region, kind of through Laconia, Tilton, Franklin, all those areas. So
Absolutely. So let's get into the culture and the community of the Lakes region. So New Hampshire as a whole has the underlying live free or die sort of mentality. I mean, it's our motto. It's the way people, I mean, I'm a native of New Hampshire, and I know from personal experience that the natives and the people who are attracted to New Hampshire very much live by that saying. So beyond just the general uh, pursuit of liberty, how would you describe the people you meet and the community that you'll find there?
yeah, so I'd say I have a uh, good bit of experience meeting a lot of locals working in manufacturing, along with just meeting neighbors and people, not directly associated with the FSP or anything. Um, and I get that live free or die mentality with my coworkers, with my neighbors. My wife and I are doing a lot of renovations on our house, and we're, do we need permits or not? And we've been asking the neighbors. We're not getting permits or anything, but kind of nervous about, like, you know uh code enforcement, like coming up and down the hill taking pictures and stuff. And like basically ask a couple neighbors. They're like, oh yeah, the town doesn't need to know. We've done all these things, we've never pulled a single permit.
Here's a few
So
tips and tricks.
yeah, exactly. So that's just a general neighbor, conversation. There's, truth for Vivek signs around all over the place around here. uh Things like that. And then, day to day at work, I work in a blue collar environment. manufacturing environment with a lot of folks, and just that live free or die mentality is I see it every day at work. Just everyone's into their guns, everyone's into basically just that leave me alone type of New Hampshire community. It's odd, never having lived in a similar thing before. I don't know how to best describe it. But it's pretty unique.
I think one of the benefits of being in that region is not only do you have access to much cheaper acreage based on other parts of the state, but it's also there's a lot of attractions that are in the area. There's a lot of tourists or tourism, so there's a lot of different things that you can go to, like Weir's Beach or Fun Spot or Castle in the Clouds. There's lots of different places you can go and experience different things that you don't have to go far to see.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. There's haven't been to a lot of those yet. Definitely planning to with this little one. But because it's a more touristy area. There's a lot of stuff that's super close. It's right on that cusp of right in the middle of the state, and you can get to almost anything in 30 minutes. The Manchester airport's maybe 45 minutes away. Boston, if you need to grab a flight, it's an hour and a half. So, for my wife and I, it's that convenience level of the Lakes region is just phenomenal.
while being a little bit more private, maybe, than being in
Yeah,
Manchester or
exactly.
Concord.
Yeah, exactly. You can still get, 3 or 4 acres, no problem. And you can get more if you're looking for that.
Right. Or if you do have a lot of money and you do want to live on Winnipesaukee, then you can enjoy the very low taxes that a lot of these towns like Wolfboro have, some of the
Yep.
lowest tax rates in the state. So as for recreation and social, have you personally been to the Lakes Region Porcupine meetup before?
I've only been to one. Um, they are fun, but they're usually on Saturdays, and that's when I try to get work done around the house a lot more. I've been down to the Concord, and that's where I know a lot of people, and there's probably been maybe 5 or 6 new movers in 2022, 2023 in the Lakes region. But they're mostly in like the southeast or southwest of the Lakes region. So they kind of tend to go down to Concord because Concord is so close. So I've been to 1 or 2, but haven't been to a ton.
So being that Concord is probably the next closest meeting for a lot of people, how would you describe the Concord atmosphere? I know they have the Area 23 meetup, and
Yep.
yep,
It
and there's the
it's
Prickle.
it's great. Yep. Yeah. So there's Area 23 and the Prickle. So Area 23 is just a local bar with live music. It's a pretty cool atmosphere for the monthly meetups. It's really just get together, different group of people each month. Different group of people each month, always something different to be talked about. Just this last month, talking to someone who moved recently, started up a coffee shop, and had an opportunity to buy some fresh roasted coffee beans. The Prickle's great. They do presentations there. They do board game nights, cookouts. Been to the Prickle a few times for game nights. It's a really interesting community there that's run by David Wilson and his wife. Really nice, right? Really nice couple, and really nice venue for events.
Yeah, that place is great. I've been there with my fiance, and it was a great time. Yeah, we played a lot of board games, talked to some people, and yeah, it was a really fun time. So yeah, I definitely if you come to the Lakes region, or the Merrimack Valley area, I recommend you check out the Prickle. It's a very fun environment. So for housing, Payson, do you want to talk about a little bit about your housing search? Maybe if there was any uh, troubles, any roadblocks, anything positive about your housing search journey?
I guess, it does take some time. If if you're if you're looking to be a little pickier, but there's opportunities out there. And the real estate market's constantly changing.
Hmm.
Talk to your real estate agent, talk to Zach. It's I bought just about a year ago, and I'm sure it's changed a lot since, interest rates and everything constantly changing. Um, Couple things to keep in mind in the Lakes region. Um, the millage rate, or the property taxes, vary a lot. So if that's important to you, definitely keep an eye on that. Um, like one town over, I don't know the exact numbers, but Belmont has like twice as high at taxes. My wife and I really like the area, but that kind of turned us off. The taxes were quite a bit higher than here in Guilford. Um, Another thing, a lot of the Lakes region towns have town beaches, deeded access to, like Lake Winnipesaukee. So if you have younger kids, or if that's an amenity you plan to use, be aware of some of those things. Um, as far east as, I think, Newfound Lake even has some, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then what else that's specific to the Lakes region? With a more touristy area, it was part of my experience that we saw more HOAs, and some rules tied to certain properties. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Um, there's they're not all necessarily bad, and they vary wildly. Um, there's two really big ones in Guilford. One of the ones in Guilford is basically, there's a secondary private beach. It's a pretty minimal HOA type of thing, but it's still an HOA. And where my wife and I live now, is technically part of an HOA, but there's a shared well, so it's realistically very minimal impact on our lives. So definitely keep that in mind as you look around. There's a lot of condos, a lot of townhouses. Um, so make sure you're doing the due diligence there.
So I'll speak a little bit on my end in terms of what I see in the real estate market right now. Since the past year, when Payson bought, things have well, affordability has in general gotten a little bit worse. So affordability is a little bit worse. Inventory still remains very low, but since the affordability has on average gone down, the demand has also slowed. So it's a much more uh, it's an environment where we're going to see a lot more, not necessarily bid, but more, uh, you can be a little bit more picky, but it's really going to be situational. So we talked a lot about the taxes and politics previously. I don't know if you want to go a little bit more on that, Payson, or if you think you've covered everything.
Um, so I guess outside of property taxes, there's not much. So, I mean, just keeping an eye out for what your tax rates are, but also kind of, and I kind of mentioned it with the town beach and stuff, like figuring out what your tax dollars do get you at least in the various towns can be useful. The politics of the local area I'm in, it seems, definitely pretty red. However, to your point with tourism, there's a lot of or a decent amount of Massachusetts people who travel up here, and obviously their politics tend to be bluish.
The second homes.
Yep.
Yep.
And but generally, they don't really affect your life outside of traffic gets a little bit worse certain times of the year. But it's not that much. It's not really even noticeable outside of like big weeks like Bike Week in Laconia and
That's
Race
another
Week
big
in
one.
Loudon.
Yeah. Yeah, Bike Week. That's one a lot of people travel for. Yeah, just recently I saw this big, I guess motorpede or whatever, motorcade. There was like probably like 100 bikes. They're just all in a line. It was very interesting to see. But yeah, Bike Week is a very big thing in the state. So what have you seen so far in terms of education? Have you considered homeschooling or private schools?
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I just gotta
Okay,
put her down.
no problem. So I'll speak a little bit on this. So I personally was not homeschooled in the state. I went to a government school in the state. But since then, things have obviously changed a little bit, maybe gotten a little bit more woke since then. I know just seeing other people who are like siblings or cousins who have gone through the school system, it's not as bad in general from what I've seen than other places. But obviously, do your own due diligence on your town, your school system, the funding, etc. See where things are going. But my fiance was actually homeschooled in the state. So she has a lot of positive experience from being homeschooled in New Hampshire. Uh, she's probably the smartest person I've met. So there's definitely a lot of homeschooling options and resources. And Payson, have you considered homeschooling or private school for your child?
Yes. So she's still about 4 years away from school. So it's a ways out, but started putting some feelers out there, talking with some local transplants, or recent FSP movers who have kids more in the, 5 to 10 range. I know there's a lot of good, religious schools locally that some other FSP members have their kids enrolled in, along with a lot of homeschooling opportunities that have good meetups pretty frequently. I know of another recent mover in the Salisbury area. They have 2 younger boys. They're constantly running kind of all over the state for various homeschool opportunities, mainly FSP, children and parents involved in those. So definitely interested in it. Just a little early to get too involved yet. I do know there are quite a few higher end private schools in the Lakes region, if that's something that interests you. It's outside the means of my wife and I, but there's a lot of preparatory schools in the Tilton area. There's the Tilton School. There's one in, I believe, Bristol. There's one up near Plymouth. There's a number of high-end prep schools in the area, if that's something that interests you. Haven't done a ton of looking into the local high school. Heard it's decent, but haven't really looked into it too much, just because we're leaning towards homeschooling. And Not sure about universities in the Lakes region so much. There's a Plymouth State up in Plymouth, but that's kind of on the cusp, I'd say. There's a couple community colleges in the area. Can't speak to their quality, but I'm aware of them.
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit on. So I went to NHTI briefly in Concord. It's not too far from a lot of areas in the Lakes region. Not technically in the Lakes region, but my experience was about par up until COVID happened when I was enrolled. When that happened, things did not go too great, but I mean, I guess what can you expect from a government school?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard good things about Plymouth. I've had a lot of friends or who have attended there, and I've heard just good things. I haven't heard anything that's alarming, at least just from anecdote. But
Mm.
that's all I can speak on it since I've never been there. Jobs in industry. I think this is one where you might have a little bit of insight on. How would you describe the you've talked about it a little bit, but is there anything more that you think you could dig into a little bit on the job aspect?
Yep. So I'm an engineer by trade. More on the white collar side of things. I've looked in the area to understand what there is for positions for me. There's a lot of local hospitals. There's a lot of local manufacturing in the aerospace industry, in various types of manufacturing. There's FW Web Company in the valve industry. Basically, there's Freudenberg and Bristol and Concord. You know, there's within a 40-minute commute. There's a dozen large manufacturing plants with minimum of 100 employees. So a lot of job opportunities there for supervisory roles, for engineering, for operations. Outside of that, I've done some looking into various firms in the area for more the engineering side. And I'd say there's always a decent number in New Hampshire on the military contractor side, with a little bit further of a commute. There's a lot of military contractors if that's something that you're willing to work in. There's a really large plant, GE aviation plant in Hooksett. I believe that's about a 40-minute commute. Then outside of that,
Well, there's
I
the
can't.
Space Force base as well that you they
Oh,
could commute to.
I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah.
So that's more what I can talk to personally. Outside of that, just driving around, I just constantly see hiring signs for everything from food service to if you're more blue collar trades. Every place in the trades all around here is hiring. Landscaping type of work, construction, excavating, all those companies in the area that I've heard or seen trucks throughout. They all have their trucks, oh, we're hiring. They all have signs out front, we're hiring, starting at easily north of $20. I know most of the manufacturing plants in the area start around 23 and go up to maybe about 35 for skilled maintenance type of work. So pretty good entry level work in manufacturing.
And keep in mind, we have no state income tax and we have no
Yes,
state sales tax as well. So that money will carry you a lot farther.
yes, absolutely. I moved from New York, and the tax savings that my wife and I get between the two of us pays for half our mortgage.
It's
It's
incredible.
yeah, you your money goes a lot further. Another recent mover in the area. I know he's an electrician. He's talked to me a little bit about the trades in the area, and he says, there's a lot of work. But he also kind of said, I think he actually took a slight pay cut here moving to New Hampshire, but overall he's making so much more because of the taxes. Because he moved from New York as well.
Yeah, he moved from New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, great guy. All right. So resources and tips. So if you're interested in receiving our Lakes Region guide, you can feel free and email me right here on my card, Zack at porcupinerealestate.com, and I can send you our Lakes Region guide. There's a lot of It's a great outline of different events, different meetups, different attractions. So if you do plan on visiting the Lakes region, then you'll have a baseline of so you'll have some information of what you can do as a baseline and go from there. And it's a good opportunity to figure out what events to go to so that you can meet people because networking is going to be your greatest resource. All right, questions. So is there any questions from the audience that we did not cover?
Hi, Zach, and
Hi,
thank you
Bob.
both for your comments. It's extremely helpful. We haven't, made a decision to move there. We live in Rockport, Mass, and we just moved here 4 years ago, right before COVID. So we got in on the real estate, which is skyrocketing. But more to complicate the situation, we have kids who really like this area. They like where we've landed. We do too. We like the town a great deal, but the overall political environment and even the taxation environment is becoming increasingly unfavorable. So I want to continue to keep my eye on New Hampshire. And I know two coworkers who have second homes in one in Wolfboro and the other one in Moultonboro. And neither one is blue by any stretch. And they're both going to retire there once, probably within the next 5 years. So, I'll have some contacts as far as that goes. And the Lake region is of, tentatively of interest because, the things that you mentioned. First of all, it's New Hampshire. Secondly, it's reasonably accessible to, I guess, what is it? I can't remember. Is it 90, 89, or I forget whichever the interstate that cuts up through it. So it's not too far out. It's beautiful. Like we're 3 blocks from the Atlantic Ocean, but we won't be able to reproduce that. We're not going to try moving to Rye or anything like that. If it's New Hampshire, it's probably going to be the Lakes region or something kind of like that. So, it's just helpful. It's nice to hear your commentary, and I'll write to you for the guide. Just to anyway, yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can speak on Rye a little bit. That area, it's going to be in general a lot more expensive in terms of you can find things that are cheaper in the lakes region, but if you want to be right on the ocean, it's probably going to be a lot more expensive. And anecdotally, it's a lot more blue. It's a lot more leftist. I know there was a lot of COVID restrictions back in around the Portsmouth area. I tried to go into Whole Foods, but I wasn't wearing a mask, and that was the only time that I've had a problem with that. Every other time, I never had a problem not wearing a mask, but that was the one
Yeah,
time when I went into Portsmouth Whole Foods.
yeah. Oh,
So,
I meant to ask you about the guide, and I'm glad you mentioned real estate taxes. Amazingly, our real estate taxes here are really low. They're lower than they were in Connecticut on a house that's worth twice as much. So I know that for New Hampshire, we would have to be very, um, we'd have to really do our homework to make sure that we get a low tax town, even if it's doesn't have maybe as many amenities, because that's going to be really important as we get older and move towards retirement and all that. So, did you have a slide there that had the real estate taxes?
we do have a slide here, but I do have the like the most current information as well that I can also forward to you in the email. And that
Yeah,
goes
that
for
would be
anyone
helpful.
else who's listening to the recording.
Yep, great, thanks.
All right, I will send that over. So do you have any other questions about the Lakes region?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Payson, do you have any closing remarks?
Nothing I can think of.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Payson, for coming up here and sharing your experience on the Lakes region. If anyone wants to reach out to me, learn a bit more about the Lakes region, you can reach out to me at Zack at porcupinerealestate.com. It's right in the back there. Or you can call me at 603-923-5004. And also visit porcupinerealestate.com if you want to see a bit more about what we have. We have a relocation guide there and more resources that you can find. So thanks for tuning in, and check out the other regions as well.